So contrary to what Donald Trump wants you to think, COVID-19 cases in the United States are continuing to rise. In fact, on July 3rd, we broke our own record with more than 57,000 new cases in one day. Now, contrast that with other countries who have been struggling to get this under control, like Italy, and on that same day, they only saw 223 new cases. Spain only saw 444 new cases. So it's not like it's eliminated in these other countries, but I mean, clearly, they've been much more effective at getting it under control, and we are very obviously doing worse than the rest of the world. Now, if you ask Donald Trump why that is, it's not necessarily because he bungled it, because he could do no wrong. He's perfect. He's a genius, right? But in his view, the only reason why we're seeing an explosion of cases is because we're doing more testing. In his view, more testing equals more cases. He tweeted out, cases, cases, cases. If we didn't test so much and so successfully, we would have very few cases. If you test 40 million people, you are going to have many cases. Now, this logic is completely idiotic because you can just stop diagnosing people with cancer, for example, and claim that you've cured cancer. But in actuality, that's not how this works. The cases would still be there. We just wouldn't know about it. And raw positive case numbers isn't the only metric that we use to determine how quickly the virus is spreading or how prevalent it is in any given area. So he's just trying to come up with some sort of justification to explain why it's so bad, because as a leader, it makes him look really incompetent because he is incompetent. But as CNBC's Wolf Fuhr explains, to dispel claims that testing is to blame for the country's growing outbreak, epidemiologists point to a figure known as the positivity rate, which indicates the percent of tests that come back positive in a given region. The data point is important because it indicates how broadly the virus is spreading throughout the community. The World Health Organization has previously said that the positivity rate for a country should remain stable at about 5% for 14 days before a country eases restrictions. Some epidemiologists have noted that the fact that the national positivity rate has yet to drop despite increased testing of the population could indicate that the virus is spreading. That states are finding more cases relative to the amount of tests they are conducting provides the strongest rebuttal to the administration's assertion that case numbers are rising because we're getting better at finding cases through increased testing. Jennifer Nuzzo, lead epidemiologist of Johns Hopkins University's COVID-19 Testing Insights Initiative, wrote in an op-ed for the Washington Post. They tell us the opposite, that each of these states needs to do even more testing to find these infections, followed by more rigorous contact tracing and isolation. So obviously, an increase in testing does not explain why we are seeing an explosion of new cases, because we're not just looking at one metric, right? It's more complex than that, in spite of what Trump wants you to believe. But again, this isn't necessarily about him trying to learn more and educate people. This is damage control. That's what this is. And look, if this weren't an election year, he wouldn't even be pretending to care about COVID-19. I mean, we're in an election year, and he could barely pretend publicly that he gives a damn at all. But I mean, this is exactly why he's tanking currently. If you look at Real Clear Politics polling averages, Joe Biden is ahead of him by 8.7 points. And Joe Biden is winning currently at this point in time, not because Joe Biden is an exciting figure or he's coming up with new policies that are exciting young people and making them want to come out and vote. No, it's because he's saying common sense things that we can all see about Donald Trump and how he's bungled his response to COVID-19, something that we could basically have under control had we acted sooner and actually taking it seriously, but we're still not really taking it seriously. So when you see the way that Joe Biden is attacking him, and not necessarily a political way, but just a common sense way, I mean, it's not really that surprising why Joe Biden is ahead. Take a look at what he's been saying about Donald Trump.
As other leaders in other countries took the necessary steps to get the virus under control, Donald Trump failed us.
In a blistering speech in Wilmington, Delaware, the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee blamed Trump, saying the country is hardly better off than it was in March.
How are we in this many months into this and still don't have what we need? You know, the steps you've taken so far haven't gotten the job done, Mr. President. Fix the shortage of PPE for our healthcare workers before you tee off another round of golf.
In contrast to Trump downplaying the need for testing,
if we didn't test, we wouldn't have cases.
The former vice president called for an increase and contact tracing. And on masks,
we absolutely need a clear message from the very top of our federal government that everyone needs to wear a mask in public. It's if I have an undiagnosed, I have it. It's to protect you against me. It's to protect other people.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Joe Biden is saying about Donald Trump here is accurate. The extent to which Donald Trump has bungled COVID-19 cannot be overstated. He had this election, I think, on lock, right? He was cruising towards re-election, and had he acted to get this under control in a serious way, I mean, we could move on. We could move past this, and it would basically not hurt him politically. But because he's been such a colossal failure of a leader here, well, this paved the way to Joe Biden taking the lead. And rightfully so. And Joe Biden is putting out attack ads against Donald Trump. And, even though not all of his ads are good, some of them are terrible, things like this are going to land because people want a leader who is going to actually make an attempt at getting us past this pandemic.
You are going to be so proud of your country. We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Now, that is an ad that shouldn't just embarrass Donald Trump. It should embarrass all Americans. Because when you compare how poorly we're doing with regard to COVID-19 to other developed countries, I mean, our response has been abysmal. I think Kyle Kalinske basically put it best when he said our response to this was akin to the way a failed state would handle a pandemic. It's been non-existent. Not only are you not trying to get it under control, but the response economically to people who are suffering has been laughable. You gave Americans a one-time payment of $1,200. So, I mean, there's so much to critique when it comes to Donald Trump and the way that he's mishandled COVID-19 up until this point, but the election is months away. So if he even was acting as a self-interested individual with any brain cells that still function, he'd at least try now to get it under control before the election. But basically, all he's doing is hoping that it goes away. That's been his response. And if you think that I'm being facetious here, no, he literally is basically just crossing his fingers and hoping that this goes away.
President Trump repeated his claim that the pandemic will soon disappear.
I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope.
You still believe so? Disappear?
Well, I do. Yeah, sure, at some point. And I think we're going to have a vaccine very soon, too.
So basically, his strategy to combat COVID-19 is thoughts and prayers. That's functionally what this looks like, because he's not proposing any real solutions. He's just not. And if you think that I am interpreting what he said there by hoping that it goes away as, a bad faith political actor, I mean, sure, we all hope that it goes away, but you have to take action. He is not going to take action, at least at this point in time. In fact, what he's banking on is the hope that people are just going to become numb to all of the deaths caused by COVID-19. That is literally what they're banking on. Because as Eric Lutz of Vanity Fair reports, Trump's administration is reportedly scrambling to assemble coherent messaging around the president's behavior. According to the Washington Post, Trump's advisors are seeking ways to reframe his response to the coronavirus, even as the president himself largely seeks to avoid the topic because he views it as a political loser. They're sending health officials to swing states, putting doctors on TV in regional markets where the virus is surging, and crafting talking points to convince Americans that, as one senior official told the outlet, they can live with the virus being a threat. Staffers are also reportedly hoping that the country grows numb to the escalating death toll, a state of mind the president seems to have already achieved. So I need you to understand, we are living through a deadly pandemic, one that's so serious that it only occurs once every 100 years, and he's just given up. He's just decided, I'm done with this, as the leader, as the president of the United States, where he's in a position to actually have an influence over this. And because he views this as a political loser, he's just not going to do anything about it. I mean, that's insane. He's just giving up on the pandemic, and he's hoping that we'll all go numb and not consider the fact that on his watch, 130,000 Americans died because of this. I mean, it's astonishing that this is actually happening in America and there's not universal outrage. The fact that he still has supporters in spite of this, it speaks to how bad American political discourse has become, right? But here's the thing. In spite of what he hopes will happen, in spite of the fact that he's banking on people just, not caring about COVID-19 after a while, you can't do that because a virus doesn't care about whether or not there's an election coming up. A virus doesn't care about your political strategy because it already has showed up at Donald Trump's doorstep. When you have Secret Service agents testing positive for COVID-19, when you have former Republican presidential candidates get treated for COVID-19 after attending Trump's rally in Tulsa, where 6 staffers, mind you, tested positive for COVID-19, and when you have Donald Trump's own son's girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle, testing positive for COVID-19, which reportedly, they viewed as a setback for the campaign who's trying to downplay it, you don't have a choice. You can't pretend like it's not a thing. Not wanting to touch this issue because you view it as a political loser isn't an option. And here's the thing, if you truly believe that Americans are dissatisfied with your response to this, you have months to change it, right? You have months to make an impact, to say, I did all of these things, we took these measures, and we helped make this virus, obsolete, basically, or at least got it under control. But he's not trying. He's literally just giving up because it's an election year, and he already fucked up, so he's just going to pretend like it's not a thing. That's the new strategy. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is unreal. It's not like he, doesn't want to at least do the bare minimum to stop Americans from suffering. He's not even putting up this facade that he cares anymore. He's not even pretending. But Donald Trump does care about you if you are an American statue, and he's pledging to make it so anyone who vandalizes or takes down a statue gets a 10-year prison sentence. 10 years. So if you are a human being in the United States with COVID-19, or maybe you don't have it, but you were affected economically and you lost your job and thus your health insurance as a result, Trump is just going to pretend as if that issue isn't really an issue. But if you're a statue in America, then Donald Trump is going to take swift action to make sure that you're protected. I mean, imagine if he cared about American human beings as much as he cared about statues. I mean, I shouldn't even have to say that because you have an interest as someone seeking re-election to at least pretend to care about us, but he's not even doing the bare minimum. He's just checked out. And it's unbelievable that we accept this, right? Americans should be taking to the streets right now and demanding his resignation. That's what we should be doing. That's how poorly he's handled this. That's how badly he's fucked up. The fact that we are just allowing the sitting president to pretend as if COVID-19 is no longer a thing, that is honestly embarrassing. The fact that he has any allies in Washington, the fact that he has any supporters voting for him, that is embarrassing. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say. He is not going to get this under control before the election, and he's just given up trying because he doesn't believe he is able to. So he's just said, fuck it, I'm moving on to the next issues. Statues, burning the flag. It's honestly just, I don't have the words to explain this. Like, we're going to look back at this moment in history, and we're going to be embarrassed that this guy actually did this and we allowed it to happen without everyone universally demanding that he step down immediately. Because 130,000 Americans have died. I mean, we invaded 2 countries because of 9/11, which killed 3,000 Americans. And now 130,000 Americans have died due to a deadly pandemic, and the response has just been meh, and we're all okay with that. I mean, it's unbelievable. So this is why he is going to end up losing. It's because of this.
Beautiful, beautiful, I will eat your ass. Beautiful, gay, beautiful.
Tremendous, 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 tremendous.